Good morning, Anne Arundel County. We are now live streaming with today's joint session of the Anne Arundel House and Senate delegation. Before we get started, though, we do have some voting after our special guest today, who I'll introduce. I want to do a quick roll call. Mr. Massey, who is our secretary, could you please take a roll call of who's here today? Thank you.
Okay, this roll call will be for the delegation meeting in Arundel County for 7 February 2025. Vice Chair Simmons.
Present.
Delegate Bagnall.
Present.
Delegate Barnes. Delegate Bartlett.
Present.
Delegate Baylor.
Present.
Delegate Chang. I believe Delegate Chang is a little under the weather today. Delegate Chisholm.
Present.
Delegate Howard.
Here.
Delegate Jones. Okay, Delegate Jones. Delegate Kipke.
Present.
Delegate Lehman. Delegate Pena Melnick.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Delegate Congolo.
Present.
Delegate Rogers.
Here.
Delegate Smith.
Schmidt, yes.
Chairman Krusky.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Jones.
I'm sorry, this is Delegate Jones. I apologize. I was having technical difficulties. Present.
Great.
We have Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Delegate Jones, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. But before we go on, it would be remiss to congratulate our newest delegate, Delegate Dylan Baylor. We want to welcome you to the delegation. We're happy to have you. Obviously, we have Delegate Congolo that was recently added, so we're glad to have both of you here as a part of the delegation. I wanted to do that. So here's the agenda in terms of moving forward. We're going to have Pledge of Allegiance of Prayer by Delegate Sandy Bartlett, and then I will introduce guests. And then we have our honored guest today, Senator Chris Van Hollen. So I will open it up. Delegate Sandy Bartlett, you have the floor to lead us in today's Pledge of Allegiance and Prayer.
Thank you. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the sunshine and that spring is on the way. We thank you for our leaders in Washington and our leaders right here amongst us in Maryland. We thank you for our families and our constituents, and we pray that you give us the strength, the confidence, the guidance, the boldness to lead as you would have us to lead. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Delegate Bartlett, for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance this morning. Before I turn it over to our guests, I want to introduce a few folks. This is a joint hearing that we call between the Anne Arundel House and Senate delegation. I see Senator Guile, Senator Pam Beidel, and Senator Clarence Lamb. If anyone else joins us, I'm sure that Senator Guile can chime in and introduce the folks from her side. But I want to take a moment and introduce today's special guests, U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen. For those of you who don't know, Senator Van Hollen obviously is serving in the Senate and is fighting for Maryland and trying to do a lot of things, especially given the challenges. But we appreciate him coming here today. We welcome him. I know he's been a great partner for Anne Arundel. I'm not going to go through the list of things that he's done for the city of Annapolis and also partnered with our county executive, county council, and the delegation. But I do want to have him bring some words today, and we'll let him speak, and then we'll open it up to questions, and then we have a full agenda after that. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Delegate Krusky. And let me just say it's a great honor to join with all of you in the Anne Arundel County delegation. And I should start by thanking you for what you're doing in these 90 days. I remember my time in Annapolis very fondly. You get a lot done in a short period of time. And I can tell you these days, I think I'd like to join you in Annapolis. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in Washington. But I do think it's important that we share information. And I know that we do and our teams do. Jessica Clayton is here. She's a regional director in Anne Arundel County and can be my eyes and ears when I'm not able to be there. So I appreciate all of the input that you provide me directly and to my team. And I should say, you know, we're working very closely as a Maryland congressional delegation, joined by my new partner in the Senate, Angela Alsobrooke. She's hitting the ground running. And of course, Congresswoman Sarah Elfreth. We're working very closely with her, and you all know her well from Annapolis. I convened the first federal delegation meeting of 2025 a few weeks ago, and we had all 8 members of the House and our 2 senators. And so we are very focused on trying to work together whenever it's important to deliver for Maryland. We have that ethic of it's one for all and all for one when it comes to issues related to Maryland. And the fact that we were able to deliver the 100% funding for the Key Bridge is one example. We take that same approach to the Chesapeake Bay and making sure we provide resources for the Bay, which is important to the state, but of course, to Anne Arundel County. So, you know, typically I would go through a number of the issues that relate directly to Anne Arundel County and some of the appropriations. And I can get to that in questions, but these really are not normal times in Washington. And it's not a partisan statement to say that it is highly unusual for an administration to turn over so much power and the keys to so many federal agencies to, in this case, Elon Musk and what's called DOGE, right? This is supposed to be the Department of Government Efficiency. It's a small band of people. One of them had to quit the other day because of information that came out about him. But they've been given access to incredibly sensitive information throughout our government. I'm sure you've all heard about what happened to the Treasury Department, access to the United States payment system. It's a $6 trillion payment system. The senior civil servant at the Treasury Department resigned before agreeing to hand this system over. It includes very sensitive personal information on Americans, social security numbers, bank account information, many other highly important areas. And that's just in one department. We're seeing this across agencies. And of course, because Maryland is home to so many federal agencies, it not only has a bad national impact, but it's also having a local impact. So that's one thing. I'm all in for government efficiency, but you don't make the government more efficient when the first thing you do is fire all the inspector generals in these agencies whose job it is to look out for, you know, waste or abuse. And the other thing we saw right away, and you probably heard from, you know, your constituents, because your constituents are my constituents and they don't always know exactly who to call. But one of the first actions taken was issuing an executive order that froze and threatened to claw back federal grants nationwide. I mean, this was a freeze put on lots of federal grant money. So we immediately began hearing from Head Start programs around the state. We heard from fire stations around the state because they receive federal grants to help purchase equipment, federal grants to help increase their force levels. And this freeze impacted all of those grants. It impacted grants to law enforcement, to efforts to crack down on human trafficking, sex trafficking. It just had a totally broad blanket approach. And the issue here is a fundamental one, which is the United States Congress, the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, passed these laws, appropriated funds for these programs. They were signed into law by the former president. They are the law of the land. And under the Federal Anti-Impoundment Act, presidents don't have the authority to then go pick and choose what they want to apply, what parts of the law and what they don't, or to freeze things across the board. So what happened was immediately lawsuits were filed, one in Rhode Island by a group of state attorney generals, one in Washington, D.C. In both cases, the judges issued temporary restraining orders against those actions. So at least for now, those funds should be flowing, although there's been a lot of disruption. So if you're hearing of organizations that do great work in our communities not getting their funds, please let us know, because it's again been very, very confusing as to the way this is working. The second major area I just want to mention relates to federal employees. I mean, Maryland, of course, is home to federal employees who do really important work for the entire country. And Arundel County is home to thousands of federal employees. We, of course, have Fort Meade, we have NSA, among other federal agencies. And there's great concern throughout the federal civil service, and rightfully so, because of some of the proposed actions that are being taken. The biggest concern is something called Schedule F. Let me just take a moment to mention it, because your federal employees are going to be in Anne Arundel County will be very focused on this. So when a new president comes in, they of course get to have their pick of their top, people. So new presidents bring in about 4,000 people, right, into the federal government, political appointees. We in Congress, under the advice and consent law, in the Senate, under the advice and consent law, we of course have a role with respect to cabinet officials and others that require Senate advice and consent. But for the most part, the president can bring in about 4,000 political appointees. So the new head of Office of Management and Budget, and we had the vote last night. I voted no. I spoke against him. Russ Vogt. He is very focused on putting in place the Schedule F idea. What is Schedule F? It would reclassify about 50 to 60,000 merit-based civil service positions into politically based positions. So it would take people who are in the merit-based civil service, who are selected based on their qualifications, based on their experience, based on their knowledge, and convert those 50 to 60,000 positions into politically based, political test positions. And in my view, and I spoke at length about this on the Senate floor yesterday, this would be a great disservice to the American people. I'm not going to go through all the history, but it was in the late 1800s that we passed the Pendleton Act and moved away from what was called the spoil system at the time, where people got lots of government positions because of their political loyalty, not over merit. So this is a big, big pending question. Lawsuits have already been filed against that executive order as well. Those lawsuits are pending, but we are very focused on exactly what's happening there. Just on a few issues related to the budget, we're at the federal level, we're currently operating under a continuing resolution. So we're in fiscal year 2025, started on October 1st. So we haven't done a fresh budget for fiscal year 2025. We're operating under a continuing resolution. We did make some adjustments, but that continuing resolution expires on March 14th. So not too many weeks from now. And we are working to try to get an agreement. But as of today, and this is in today's paper, the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans have not agreed among themselves as to what the top line number would be. And of course, Republicans have the majority in the House and the Senate. So if they can't agree, we have a problem. And as of now, based on what they're saying, it's going to be very hard for many of us to support the proposals, certainly being advanced in the House, but even some in the Senate. So This is going to be potentially a great disruption, which I hope to avoid on March 14th, but you will be hearing more about the risks of government shutdowns. Let me just, and I will say that in addition to all the federal programs that, support, people throughout our state and programs across our state and support counties and frankly, federal funds that flow to the state, like the billions of dollars for infrastructure. This would obviously have a very damaging impact in many cases. Now, and it includes just we for Anne Arundel County, we have about $12 million for 14 very good local projects, nonprofits, and others. All that would go away if we can't get a new fresh budget. On a positive note, even in the difficult times, we've been able to work together as a delegation to preserve some of our really important state priorities. Last time around, when the Trump administration came to Washington, you may remember their first budget zeroed out funding for the Chesapeake Bay. So the Chesapeake Bay program at that time, the EPA's program, was $73 million a year. They zeroed it out in the first budget year, and every year that thereafter, they proposed 7.3 million, not 73 million. We were able, again, working on a bipartisan basis in the Senate with our colleagues and in the House, to not just prevent those cuts, but we actually increased the federal investment in the Chesapeake Bay program from 73 million to now where it is closer to 90 million, given the challenges that we face in the Bay. So as I said at the beginning, our delegation, Team Maryland, works very closely together on some of these priorities. And we hope even in these times to be able to preserve these important priorities. Let me just mention in closing a bill that Congressman Sarbanes and I introduced, the Chesapeake National Recreation Area Bill. I believe this is a very important initiative. I believe it will help sustain and increase federal resources to the Bay over time. I think it'll be a great draw for tourists and be an economic boost to everybody who makes their livelihood from the Bay. There are some communities in Anne Arundel County that we are still continuing to work with, but this bill passed the United States Senate in the closing days of the last session unanimously in a bipartisan way. It did not get out of the House given everything that was happening there, but we're working to get this passed this year. And as I said, we're still working on some issues, and Congresswoman Elfreth is working on some issues as well with some of the communities in Anne Arundel County. Let me stop there, Mr. Chairman. Great to be with all of you. Thanks for what you do, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
First of all, I want to thank you on behalf of the joint delegation, Senator Van Hollen, for certainly supporting us. And I will tell you, we're excited about the Key Bridge. I don't know if anybody's seen, but the renderings of the bridge and starting to see some movement with that. And it's definitely had a large impact in Anne Arundel, obviously for people traversing, for business. And also, I appreciate the update on Chesapeake Bay because each of us obviously see that as a natural resource, and we appreciate that. I'm going to go through. It looks like we have a few questions, Senator Van Hollen, if you'd be willing to entertain those, and then we'll close this joint hearing. But let's start with Delegate Howard first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Senator. I've always worked well with your office, and I've always appreciated when you and I and your field office works together. And quite frankly, that's why I was a little hurt the other day when I saw you at a podium with the likes of Ilhan Omar and other radicals screaming that you were at war with 74 million Americans that voted for and supported Donald Trump, me being one of them. And I would just like to get your comments on that. Are you at war with me? Do you think that's an appropriate use of language?
Actually, you're not quoting me. I don't know who you're quoting.
Well,
I didn't say I was Delegate Howard. I didn't say I was at war with you. What I was talking about, we had two important gatherings. One was at the Department of Treasury, where we were talking about what I was referring to at the beginning of the conversation, that Elon Musk and this group of people have gained access to highly sensitive information. In fact, it looks like a court just in the last 48 hours has intervened there. And if you think it's a good idea for Elon Musk and this crew to have access to that information, we have a strong disagreement.
So let me ask you.
Let me finish.
Sure.
I also object strongly to Elon Musk coming in and shutting down the Agency for International Development. Last night, they essentially fired 13,000 people, or said they were going to fire 13,000 people worldwide. A very important part of our national security and foreign policy strategy. They're going to keep 294 people. Now, the good news is last night, a group filed a suit against that action and the actions they're taking at AID. So this is a moment actually where what Elon Musk is doing, in my view, and obviously in the view of lots of judges, is actually unconstitutional. And so I do believe we have a duty to, defend Article 1 and the Constitution, and also a lot of federal employees who you and I represent, who do great work for our country.
How long has USAID been around?
USAID has been around for many, many, many decades.
Have you known about USAID since your time in the U.S. Senate? And you talked a little bit about government efficiency. I was wondering if you could point me to a bill that you had proposed to go into USAID and look at some of the things that tax dollars were being spent on. When you look at like Medicare for Marylanders, almost 30% of all Marylanders are on Medicare right now. One of the concerns I have is about funding for these crucial programs in Maryland. I know it's sort of apples to oranges, but as an older person, as a person receiving government funding, when you look at this and you say, well, it's $50,000 for shrimp on a treadmill, or it's only $1 million here, $1 million here, there. Well, grains of sand make a heap. And for people out there struggling every day, this is real money. $1,000, $100 in a lot of cases is real money. So I was just hoping, with your time in the U.S. Senate and your knowledge of USAID, that you could point me to a piece of legislation where you talk about efficiency and going in and look at and carving out some of the inefficient spending. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand some of the foreign aid that goes out. I totally understand the fact that if we don't give some foreign aid out to some of our allies, and quite frankly, some people that aren't our allies, Russia and China happily will. But I was just wondering if you could point me to that legislation about that speaks to efficiency and effectiveness of agencies like DOGE. Or I'm sorry, like USAID.
1 second, Delegate Howard, if we can just have him answer that question. I have 4 other people. We have a lot of agenda, but if you want to take this offline, that's fine.
I think we'll just talk offline, and we'll get to
No.
Senator Van Hal, if you want to respond, and then
I sure would like to. Yeah, I serve on the Appropriations Committee. I've known about AID for a very long time. They do really important work on behalf of our government. They're a very teeny sliver of our overall national security and foreign policy efforts. As I go through the budget every year, yes, we review them. We say this program no longer may be effective. This one is. You're reciting also just a lot of misinformation. I mean, they've already had to withdraw. The White House has already had to take back claims that they made about AID spending. They just had their facts wrong. They made them up. They claimed that there was $50 million spent on condoms in Gaza. Just not true. 100% false. So please take the time to look at these issues. AID, you say you support AID. Well, that's good, because I can tell you
some of the missions.
Yeah. Well, you can pick out a few little things.
Sure. Anyway.
Yes,
we both
could.
can.
I mean, I could go through the state. I go through your state budget. Yeah, but here's the thing. If you think it's a good idea to stop funding efforts to prevent the spread of diseases overseas, like Ebola or whatever it may be, that's a good thing because it saves millions of people overseas. It's also a good thing because diseases don't know any borders, and they can come here and kill Americans. So to me, that's a good investment.
Thank you,
Well, as
Senator.
long as that's what the money's going for,
Thank-
absolutely. And
thank you,
that's as
Delegate
long
Howard.
as the money gets at the end user, yes.
But
100%.
you're just making these statements based on information that's been
I'm-
misleading and proven false.
I'm asking you the question and you're saying they're false. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Delegate Howard. You guys continue online. We have a difference of opinion, but we have others that want to get in, and we have a long agenda today. So thank you. Senator Guile was next, but before I do that, I believe Senator Henson joined us, but I wanted to turn it over next to Senator Guile. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, Senator Van Hollen. Some of my concerns really relate to these requirements of return to work in person policies that have been implemented. And specifically, I'm concerned about, Marylanders that have made certain decisions as far as where they live, may have bought homes like, out in Frederick or Anne Arundel County or Northern Maryland. And now really concerned about how they're going to handle childcare and commuting in person to work. And I'm really concerned in particular about the impact on women in the workforce, because I really feel as though it's going to really impact, who ends up leaving the workforce in order to, stay back home to take care of kids or whatever. It's oftentimes women. I'm also concerned about, I know just from my background of being a military spouse, we've done a lot of advocacy on military spouse employment. And in the past, certain federal agencies have implemented policies that have really helped, in particular, military spouses to be able to work remotely, to be able to, whether their spouse has a duty assignment throughout the country or even overseas, that they can continue to work. And I'm hearing from a lot of military spouses, those that are, in Ohio or California, that they're now being required, to come back, to DC in order to work in person, and just really has some negative impact on them and their experience and their families. So I'm wondering, I'm hearing different things about, some of the recommendations that are being made to federal employees about this change in policy. Also hearing concerns about whether or not there's even physical building space for these folks to return in person. So I wonder if you could comment on that, or any reassurance or support or guidance that we can give to constituents and others about their fears and how this is going to impact their families. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you for raising this issue. Thank you for pointing out the impact, the harmful impact this has had on military families and others. Look, I think we all recognize that there's no one size fits all to telework, right? There's some jobs where you've got to come in full time. I mean, a lot of folks at Fort Meade, for example, they have security clearances. They come in all the time. There are others where you can work from home some days and come in on other days. If you look at the private sector, that is very much a model as well. Before COVID, the issue of federal workers doing telework on a selective basis where it makes sense was a bipartisan issue. I remember Congressman Frank Wolf from Virginia was the guy who was pushing, he's a Republican, was pushing federal telework, both for the benefits for the family, but also benefits to other people when you have less traffic congestion. So it was a win-win. Anyway, now, my view is after COVID, it did take too long for some federal agencies to get people who needed to be in the office more into the office more, but they were working still from home. What we need to do is recognize that different jobs have different requirements, and some people can work much more efficiently from home and get the job done from home at least certain days a week. But what we're seeing now is not a one size fits all. I mean, again, this was an Elon Musk thing, right? He made a big deal in his companies that there would be no more telework after the end of COVID. Everybody had to come in. And so he's applying that model to the federal government. So we are trying to at least address the issues you raised with respect to military families and other families. So again, this is an area where it's gotten highly politicized and very unfortunately so. But we hear you. We're working on very specifically. I'm working with some of our House counterparts on exactly the issue you raised, and we'll see if we're successful.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Lehman is next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator Van Hollen, I cannot thank you enough for your voice, for your leadership, for that news conference you did. I know I was asking myself, wow, where is our Maryland delegation? I haven't seen much from them, and I'm sure you're scrambling. It's like whack-a-mole, right, to deal with all these things that are popping up. But I, for one, was very glad to see you leading that news conference. My quick follow-up to Senator Guile, I thought you would mention this in your answer, but you didn't. I thought a judge issued some kind of ruling yesterday with that deadline that came for federal workers to say either that yes, they would accept that buyout, or no, they wanted to stay. In which case, either situation didn't sound good, because I was told by my nephew, who is an engineer with the U.S. Patent Office, that if you said no, you didn't want the buyout, that folks were receiving really, sort of ominous sounding emails saying, if you don't accept the buyout, you might not even have a job anyway. So what do you know about that? Was there a judge's ruling in that case yesterday?
Right. So thank you for raising that issue. That's a different issue than Senator Giles was raising. She was raising this telework issue, but you're raising the buyout issue. So there are lots of concerns about this buyout. What a judge did was sort of paused the buyout, but also extended the amount of time that federal employees could opt in. I have been recommending that federal employees approach this with extreme caution because it's not clear whether or not they have the authority to actually implement this buyout program. And there are lots of concerns with the way it's been structured. That said, as you mentioned, thousands of people, at least so far, have been opted in, although not the amount of people that they were hoping would opt in. As I understand the buyout program, it allows a federal employee to sort of stop working now, but continue to receive pay through September. Right. That's the buyout. That's the bonus. Although we did hear the other day, and I have not verified these reports, that some people at the IRS, for example, who said they wanted to opt in for the buyout, were told that they couldn't leave until after tax season. So there's, again, a lot of confusion here, which is why we're just urging federal employees to fully understand the risks as they look at this. But yes, a judge has both paused it, but also extended the time that people can opt in by a short window.
Right. And just really briefly, the reason why I kind of conflated those things is for a lot of people like my nephew, to Senator Giles' point, he bought a home up in Baltimore, he and his wife, and was in the U.S. Patent Office for years, way before COVID, workers were allowed to telecommute. And that is part of his decision about whether to stay or not, is that issue of whether he would be required to work in person. Anyway, very briefly on the issue of USAID, I would just say to Delegate Howard and others on here, besides the obvious things we know about, disease fighting, and I've actually heard from 5 different contractors to USAID, directly or indirectly. One of the other things they do, which I didn't know about, and we were just briefed on this in the Environment and Transportation Committee, is USAID is the world's leading researcher on bird flu, researcher and monitor. And bird flu is a very serious issue in this country. If it hits our chickens on the eastern shore of Maryland, we are in real trouble. So that's another very important function of USAID. And thank you.
That's a very good point with respect to the work that AID does. They often do it in conjunction with the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, and they do very, very important work. And thank you for also mentioning is this the telework issue? There were lots of federal employees like you mentioned in the patent office, where they were doing telework before COVID, and now they're caught up in this sweep. Even though if you were looking at like a patent lawyer in the private sector, they also do telework in many cases.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's good to see all of you. Senator Van Hollen, you have about 1 more minute. You have next meeting coming up. So I just wanted to ask everybody to wrap it up. Chair Pruski, if you want
Thank
to
you.
make
Totally
that.
understand. Delegate Rogers, you're up next. Make it quick.
Also, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Van Hollen, thank you for your leadership. And I would just ask you, and that's probably perfect timing on Jessica's part, because I wanted to shout her out for all the great things she's doing. She's everywhere. Everywhere I go, I see Jessica Clayton, so she's doing an incredible job. But I would just ask that as information comes out, leverage us to help you to get to the constituents to share that information. So as you have stuff that would be helpful for us to share to our joint constituents, let us know and let us be that arm. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you raised that. So, and Jessica can get you the information. I have a e-newsletter. It goes to thousands and thousands of people across the state. We're trying to keep people updated on all the questions that are coming up here. And Jessica, if you could get all the delegates and senators here that information, if they want to share it with your constituents, it is probably the fastest way to keep people updated. Senator Alster-Brooks and I are also going to be scheduling a teletown hall for federal workers sometime next week, and we'll get you the information if you want to share that with our constituents as well.
Thank you. Delegate Jones?
There we go. Thank you so much, Senator Van Hollen. I appreciate all the work that you have done. It is regarding much of what we've spoken about today. I have constituents, neighbors, you are shared constituents who have already been let go. They work in public health. They work on contracts in USAID because they saw their fathers saving lives in the same programs, right, as doctors. And so I want to thank you, but I also wanted to touch upon the child care crisis. As president of the Women's Caucus, we are working diligently to put together a meaningful yet revenue neutral package of bills here at the state level to help with childcare. But if we make everyone go back to work, first off, we don't have the childcare seats for these kids. Women, much like my colleague in Senator Guile said, like I'm worried about women in the workplace. I'm concerned because we just don't have the childcare available to turn off a switch overnight. But I look forward to my continued work with Jessica, who is absolutely brilliant, always so responsive. And I would love more information on the teletown hall, because I know with all of my constituents, I can't walk my dog without someone pulling on me and saying, I lost my job. What am I going to do? So this is really hurting District 30A, and thank you so much for hearing us out.
Well, Delegate Jones, thank you for the work you're doing on childcare, and that is a huge issue. And of course, when you have, a job where you can telework, and that also allows you to, be around not have to commute in and save that time for your family. That's obviously a good thing as well. So thank you for all your efforts there.
Thank you. And Delegate Pena-Melnick, if you could be quick, because I know
I'm so sorry, Delegate Pruski. We actually do have to go. He's expected in Baltimore City now. So thank you all so much.
I'll follow up with you, Jocelyn. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you again, Senator, for coming.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you.
It's great to be with you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks.
All right. I know sometimes we're trying to keep everybody answer questions. I want to thank the senator for coming. And as he said, he'll follow up with Jessica in his office. We do have a further robust agenda. I'd ask if you have questions to keep them limited. This is the closing, though, of the joint hearing. Now we're going to move into the Arundel House delegation, and we're going to move right on to bills. The way it works, again, is anything that's up for a vote, we'll look for a motion. If not, obviously, it either goes to subcommittee or go from there, but we'll go right into it. So the first bill that we have is HB 447, Anne Arundel County Property Tax Credit, Habitat for Humanity, the Chesapeake. I didn't know if the sponsor wanted to add anything else before we move forward, and any motions.
No, it's just it's a cleanup bill asked for by the county as well, so they can retain their tax exempt status just by changing their name.
Okay. Is there any motions on the floor regarding this bill?
Move favorable.
Okay.
Second.
I see the bill has been properly moved and seconded. Mr. Secretary, could you please call the roll?
The vote that we'll be taking next is for House Bill 447, Anne Arundel County Property Tax Credit, Habitat for Humanity of the Chesapeake Incorporated. Vice Chair Simmons,
Yes.
Delegate Bagnell,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Baylor,
Yes.
Delegate Chang, Delegate Chisholm,
Yes.
Delegate Howard,
Yes.
Delegate Jones,
Yes.
Delegate Kipke,
Yes.
Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick,
Yes.
Delegate Congolo,
Yes.
Delegate Rogers,
Yes.
Delegate Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Pruski.
Yes.
By a vote of 14-0 with 2 absent, the motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We'll move forward.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask that that bill, the letter of support be sent to Ways and Means? The hearing was already over there, but I would greatly appreciate if we could do that.
Mr.
Thank you.
Secretary, you would go with that?
Yes, the letters will be hopefully done today, if not Monday morning first thing.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next bill is HB 469. This is up for vote. Anne Arundel County, Annapolis, and Anne Arundel County Conference and Visitors Bureau. Did the sponsor want to add anything?
No, that pretty much sums it up. We're just asking that the name be changed to the, I apologize. So no, I don't have anything to add.
Move
Thank you.
favorable.
Is there a
Second.
Second. Thank you, Delegate Gogolo, and thank you for the motion in the second. Any further discussion? Mr. Secretary, you can please call the roll.
All right, the next vote by the delegation is for House Bill 469, titled Local Government in Annapolis and Anne Arundel County Conference and Visitors Bureau Designation. Vice Chair Simmons,
Yes.
Delegate Bagnell,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Baylor,
Yes.
Delegate Chang, Delegate Chisholm,
Yes.
Delegate Howard,
Yes.
Delegate Jones,
Yes.
Delegate Kipke,
Yes.
Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick,
I'm glad you called me before that sneeze. Yes.
Delegate Congolo,
Yes.
Delegate Rogers,
Yes.
Delegate Smith,
Schmidt, yes.
Chairman Pruski.
Yes.
By a vote of 14-0, the motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Keep moving forward. HB 598 is up for a vote. It's Anne Arundel County Property Tax Credit. I'll let the sponsor if it wanted to add anything for this.
Thank you so much, Chairman. This is another tool in the toolbox to help eradicate food deserts in our county. There are 17 designated by the Census Bureau, 17 food deserts. Move favorable.
Second.
Okay. Looks like we have a motion properly seconded on the vote. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
The next vote by the delegation will be for House Bill 598, Anne Arundel County Property Tax Credit Supermarkets. Vice Chair Simmons,
Yes.
Delegate Bagnell,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Baylor,
Yes.
Delegate Chang, Delegate Chisholm,
Yes.
Delegate Howard,
Yes.
Delegate Jones.
Yes.
Delegate Kipke, Delegate Kipke, Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Pena Melnick,
Yes, and Delegate Kipke just unmuted himself.
Yeah, and my
Delegate Kipke, how do you vote?
yeah, my internet froze. Thank you.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Delegate Congolo,
Yes.
Delegate Rogers,
Yes.
Delegate Smith,
Schmidt, yes.
Chairman Pruski.
Yes.
By a vote of 14-0, House Bill 598 motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The next bill is HB 410. There is an amendment, and I'll let the sponsor speak to that. This is Anne Arundel County Board of License Commissioners, Chief Inspector Compensation, and I'll turn it over to the amendment sponsor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to just extend my sincere appreciation for the chairman and vice chair and the subcommittee for working with me on this. I know we put a lot of time and conversation into it. I struck the police accountability board section of the amendment simply because the Alcohol Commission actually falls underneath of us as a state. So if they need to report, they need to report to us. Although that they're fall underneath the Anne Arundel County's liquor section. So I struck that from the bill. I looked at the raise section and felt like, I think I made my point last week that it was a large jump. And from what I understand, they already get a 3% COLA. So if we go to an NR6, it would continue to go up. So I amended the bill to NR6, which roughly, I don't have it in front of me, is a minimum of $1,500 to, I think, like $3,700 if I think I'm pretty close on that. So it is a raise. It's just not 10-step raise.
Delegate Chisholm, looks like we have a question from Delegate Bagnall before any motion. Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just so we understand this amendment, this is being offered by the sponsor, Delegate Chisholm, or is this being offered, was this considered and being offered by the alcohol subcommittee, just so we understand the nature of the amendment?
Mr. Chair, would you like to,
Yeah.
I offered the amendment in subcommittee, the amendment was voted on by the subcommittee and passed.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or motions on this amendment?
Move favorable on the amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, we have a favorable or a motion to move the amendment and a second. Please take the roll call on the amendment.
All right, this vote again is for the amendment to House Bill 410, Anne Arundel County Board of License Commissioners, Chief Inspector, Compensation. Vice Chair Simmons,
Yes.
Delegate Bagnall,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Baylor,
Yes.
Delegate Chang, Delegate Chisholm,
Yes.
Delegate Howard,
Yes.
Delegate Jones,
Yes.
Delegate Kipke,
Yes.
Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Pena-Melnick,
Yes.
Delegate Congolo,
Yes.
Delegate Rogers,
Yes.
Delegate Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Pruski.
No.
By a vote of 13-1 with 2 absent, the amendment motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Now we have a bill that's been properly moved with the amendment. Is there a motion on the current bill as amended?
Move the bill as amended.
Is there a
Second.
second? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Chairman, please call the roll.
All right, the vote by the delegation on House Bill 410 with amendment. Chair Simmons,
Yes.
Delegate Bagnall,
Yes.
Delegate Barnes, Delegate Bartlett,
Yes.
Delegate Baylor,
Yes.
Delegate Chang, Delegate Chisholm,
No.
Delegate Howard,
No.
Delegate Jones,
Yes.
Delegate Kipke,
No.
Delegate Lehman,
Yes.
Delegate Pena-Melnick,
Yes. Yes.
got it. Delegate Congolo,
No.
Delegate Rogers,
Yes.
Delegate Smith,
No.
Chairman Pruski.
Yes.
By a vote of 9, 4 and 5 against with 2 absent, the motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And now that is it for votes. We will now move to the first hearings on several bills. And the first one is, it had an LR, but now it has an HB. HB 1259, Anne Arundel County Alcoholic Beverages License and Permit Distant Requirements. This is Delegate Howard. I will turn the floor over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hold on, let me just access my notes. Come on, there we go. Okay, this legislation is introduced to resolve an issue with our alcoholic beverage law that arose as we try to recruit tenants back to the Annapolis Mall, which we all know was once a center of economic activity, and we'd like to get it back to that point again. There is a charter school, that plans to locate in the mall, which is a very positive development, and I think a great use of some of the vacant spaces in our malls. However, when that occurs, it would trigger an existing law prohibiting new liquor licenses within 1,000 feet of a school. Existing restaurants and other entertainment venues at the mall that currently hold alcohol beverage licenses would not be affected, but other future restaurant and entertainment tenants would be caught by the prohibition. This bill adds a narrow exception to the 1,000-foot rule, allowing restaurant licenses that also obtain an entertainment permit to locate within that 1,000-foot barrier. It applies only to the Annapolis Mall. Only to the Annapolis Mall. There are already other exceptions to this rule, but they do not cover the situation before us. So this is why the genesis of the bill. And I believe we have Mr. Wise on as well that can speak to any of the operating mechanisms of the bill as well.
Thank you, Delegate Howard. Is there anyone, Mr. Wise, Liquor Board, or delegates that would like to say anything? If so, please raise your hand or unmute. It looks like Delegate Chisholm.
Yeah, just a quick question. That mall just sold to a new group. Has this bill been discussed with them, Delegate Howard, or have you ever got any input from them?
To the new group?
Didn't the Annapolis Mall just turn? I thought the Annapolis Mall just sold.
Couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I mean, this is a bill that would affect future licensing for restaurants in the Annapolis Mall.
Okay.
I can't imagine it would be a negative
to
any type of investor or landlord.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Just curious. Thank you.
I think it changed from Westfield management, is my understanding.
It looks like Mr. Wise might have an answer to that question. I'm going to let him address that. Mr. Wise?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Pruski and members of the delegation. Yes, I represent on this the operator of the mall. So they are supportive of it, as is the charter school that was referenced. Ms. Kinley Bray is an attorney for the operator of the mall. She's also on, but we don't necessarily need to add to what Delegate Howard said, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I think we answered that question. Is there any other discussion on HB 1259? Oh, Delegate Bartlett, sorry.
I had a question, but you just answered it. It's because I didn't have the new bill number. So 1259?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, any other hands? I want to use my wait time here. Okay, I believe we answered that question, so we'll continue on. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was trying to get similar to Delegate Bartlett. What was the bill number for that?
It is HB 1259.
And that's for LR 3132.
Correct. Yeah. It didn't have a House bill number, but as you know, as it's dropped in the hopper, it may take a day or two to show. And with the work of our great team, we were able to get you the HP number. So that is the HP number for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay. Any other further questions on HB 1259, formerly LR 3132? Okay. We're going to move forward then. We have HB 1281, Anne Arundel County Alcohol Beverages Limited Cultural Event Permit. I'm going to turn this over to the sponsor and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You should have, I know that you have in your inbox a reprint of this bill that incorporates striking the bill and replacing it with very helpful suggestions from the Liquor Board. So you might want to bring that up in front of it to take a look at. What this bill does is it creates we're striking the word cultural dancing, even though that's the problem we were seeking to resolve. And we're changing it to a special event permit. It's a new permit that a licensee can apply for. The board, at its sole discretion, may issue the permit, and then it lists out the different appropriate classes of licensees. What we're trying to do here is create a mechanism in the law that will legalize something like Brian Baru in Severna Park having a group of young Irish dancers to be able to perform the week of St. Patrick's Day. Or similarly, a Hispanic restaurant in Laurel who wanted to have a certain type of dance performance at around Cinco de Mayo. The board was considering those things to be a violation of their rules as it relates to dancing and disallowing those types of things from happening. So over the interim, there was a work group established and headed by Anne Arundel County Economic Development, and this was one of the major, this was one of the findings, that the suggestion to a remedy to that issue. So this is something that's worked out between me and the liquor board. The bill incorporates their suggested amendments and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Kipke. If there's anything from the liquor board or anyone else, please unmute or raise your hand now.
We did discuss it.
Go ahead, Anne Arundel County Board of License Commissioners, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Edward here. Yeah, we did have the pleasure to work with Delegate Kipke, and we are in support of this bill that would allow these establishments to have these cultural type dancing events.
Okay, any further questions from the delegates? Thank you. We will proceed then. Next, we have HB 571, Anne Arundel County Alcoholic Beverages, Class C Veterans Organizations License Event Permit. Turn again to the sponsor.
So this comes from a VFW in my district, but I have heard from other members that they may have some interest in this as well. And I haven't amended it or anything like that, but if there is a suggestion from some that it be expanded beyond veterans organizations to organizations like the Elks Lodge and things like that. What the bill does, it creates right now at the VFW in my district, when they rent out their hall, which is a major source of revenue for them, they the organization that rents the hall has to get a one-day liquor license, and they have to buy and serve any adult beverages. What the bill will do is it will create a permit for the organization to basically, the VFW to be the bar for that rented space, for that rented event. Why is this important? Why can't they do it now? The law requires that they only be the bar for members or member guests. So you have to be a guest of a member, or you have to be a member of the VFW. This will change the law to allow them to have a permit to sell alcoholic beverages to someone that rents their hall. Why is it important? Well, two major reasons. One, the VFW, like all of these volunteer nonprofits, they struggle to keep the lights on. So this will help them certainly with revenue by selling directly to people who rent their space. But two, it's also important because the law already requires the VFW to have the training, the alcohol awareness training that any other establishment would be required to participate in. So they have on site at all times someone who's been trained, to not serve someone who's a minor or not overserve someone. So that's very important. And they did share with me that there were instances where things got a little out of hand with people who rented their space, even to the point where they decided not to rent to certain groups because they were basically over-serving. The liquor board did bring up concerns related to how something like this might impact a not-for-profit as it relates to the collection of the sales and alcohol tax. I did verify that they're already required, even with their own members, to collect the sales and alcohol tax, and they're already doing it. So I think that that issue is We reviewed that, and that doesn't seem to be an issue. So with that, I'll conclude and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Kipke. Looks like we have a few questions. We'll start with Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Kipke. So if you could, so I want to make sure I understand. So we passed, I think we passed, or maybe we heard House Bill 515, and we have House Bill 571. I thought House Bill 515 would allow a Class C licensee to convert to, I'm just looking at this letter from January 24th from Delegate Rogers. So it would allow a Class C veteran's license or someone who has a Class C to convert to a veterans organization license. Is that correct? That's just my first question. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does this do? And if it does what it says it does in the purpose paragraph about establishing an event permit, tell me what it actually, what is this a new class or what is it?
Okay, so Delegate Rogers and I looked at maybe merging our two efforts here, but I didn't want to slow him down. His is clean and worked out. I think mine is now clean and worked out once we've got the question related to the sales and alcohol tax resolved. But what it doesn't change the license type. It just creates a new permit for that licensee.
I see.
Yeah, so they're prohibited from being the bar for a rented space event. This will allow them to do it.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Delegate Bagnall is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Kipke, for working on this. I guess my question is can this bill be expanded to some of those other organizations? I too have had the Elks who have articulated this same issue in my district, that they, essentially they're concerned about renting their space because the organization has to bring everything in, they have to take everything out, they have to lock up their supply, and they are deeply concerned about over-serving. I know it speaks to veterans organizations, but are we able to expand this?
I would be supportive of expanding it to any of the nonprofit licensee types. But obviously that's a decision that, our delegation would need to discuss and vote on. I see that the liquor board has their hand up. Maybe they have some feedback as well.
Yes, I was going to allow the Anne Arundel Liquor Board to respond. You might go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Edward again. Yeah, we do have some concerns. We do feel that it would require further study. Currently, these class nonprofit licenses are they're mainly for their members and members of guests. So when they do rent the halls out, they are required to get a one-day license through us. And yes, the people who are having the event are supposed to supply their own alcohol. So it does blur the lines a little bit between a nonprofit and a for-profit. We did have concerns, and we still have some concerns about the tax because there is a 9% sales tax for alcohol, but they only will be charging 6%. So we're just a little concerned that it might impact their club's nonprofit tax exempt status. So we would love to have some type of work group or study, just a little more time to discuss this with everybody, because that type of license is for nonprofits, and it's specifically for their members and their clubs. The other bill, which allows these veterans clubs, we do have 8 of them. They will be allowed to convert their license from just a regular Class C to these veterans organizations, and we have we've helped Senator Simon Ayer, and they would not be required to have to go through the process of applying for it, going to a hearing and all that. We could do that during the renewal period, and we're really happy to be able to help with those groups. So that's just our concern. I don't know if anybody
I just want to say that Senator Kipke, yeah, we've been talking about this internally for a while, so it's a really worthy piece of legislation. And I think that, conceptually, we support it, but I think the devil's in the details, and I think we have to be really thoughtful when we're dealing with the difference in the taxes and for-profit, not-for-profit. So I think we'd love to continue to work on this to get it to a place where we can get everybody what they're looking for here, but I do think it will take a little more time.
Okay, thank you to the liquor board. Is there any motion to move this to subcommittee, or we can move it to next week? I just, considering the comments, I'd entertain anything, but I don't want to make any motions. I'll leave it up to the delegation.
I'd move it to the subcommittee. I think it's valuable discussion.
Okay, we have a motion to move this bill to subcommittee. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We will move HB 571 to subcommittee. Thank you, Delegate Kipke, and thank you to the liquor board for responding. Did you have to add anything else? Is your hand still up, the liquor board? I see you're on the, okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. Vice Chairman, if you would take over. Oh, Vice Chairman's not here, so I will just continue. If anybody has any questions, my next two bills are actually me. And they're the first time being heard, so I'll just open it up. So HB 402 is Anne Arundel County Board of Education Student Member Scholarship. So actually, I had to go to the committee hearing yesterday to present. I wanted the delegation to go first. Obviously, you have that, but however it's scheduled, it's scheduled. The crux, though, of this bill, and actually Senator Simon Ayers, the cross-file, and to be quite candid, he was the one who brought the bill to me. But our Anne Arundel County student board member only receives $8,000 towards a scholarship for their service. And every other board member who's a nonpartisan election gets $15,000. The vice president gets 16, and the president gets 17 in service for that year. So what this bill would do would be implemented this year for this student board member. It would give them the equivalent amount. And just so you're aware, the compensation as far as the equivalent amount is equal to a semester, obviously, at the University of Maryland or our colleges. So it's not like we're creating something new. But again, this bill would move that scholarship. Notice I said scholarship, not payment. Scholarship towards higher ed learning for the student from $8,000 to $15,000 to be parity. I know I've spoken with a lot of delegates and other folks that were unaware that the student board member did not receive that same compensation when you all, before I came, raised that. So I will stop there and see if there are any questions in relationship to this bill. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, is it just enabling legislation, or does this go into statute?
No, this would be a statute to raise that. We set the board member salaries, for all school board members, including the student board member. And I've reached out to both the county executive and the school board. The school system set a letter of support, and also the county executive, my understanding, unless they want to chime in differently, has also said they are neutral and they were fine with the increase within the budget.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Thank you, Delegate Chisholm. Any other questions on HB 402, Anne Arundel County Board of Ed Student Membership Scholarship? Delegate Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair. Is the scholarship for state schools or any schools?
I believe it is state schools, but I can find out from you. I have to take a look because just like we award, for our scholarship program, those have to be in the state of Maryland. The only exemption is if there's a program that is not offered in the state of Maryland. So I believe it follows the same rules, but I will get back to you on that.
Yeah, I would support that if it's, similar rules as to our scholarship. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, any further questions? All right, we have one more bill. This is HB 453, Anne Arundel County Development Impact Fees.
Chair, it looks like Delegate Congola may have had a question.
I'm sorry, Delegate Congola. My apologies. Go ahead.
The tone of my hand blends in with my background, so you tend to miss me, but it's okay.
I apologize. Go ahead.
No worries, no worries. Just wanted to get clarification. So the increase in this the scholarship, that will increase the budget of the board AACPS, their school
Correct.
budget.
That is correct. So $7,000 is the nexus. Right now it's 8. It would be 15. So within the Board of Education budget, but also County Council, who obviously funds, that's why I reached out to the county executive and there. And again, I've had no, negative feedback or other things because, again, not to say any amount is minimal, but obviously this is there, and obviously it's a parity piece. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Ngola. Anyone else? And again, I apologize. Sometimes unmute if I don't see you. But I want to make sure everybody has their word. Any other questions on HB 402? Great. Okay, so HB 453, Anne Arundel County Development Impact Fees. This bill is actually brought forward by Anne Arundel County. I'm introducing it on their behalf. I did serve on the county council. And if you read the language actually in state law, Anne Arundel County can waive, and this is by the county council, by the way, can waive credits against development impact fees. And currently the language says for development by a nonprofit entity in existence for at least 3 years. And that is something currently in law. The proposal in this bill is to delete that language. And what would happen is the county council would have the ability, if they wanted to waive impact fees for certain projects, they would set the rules with that piece. And I understand conversations with the county executive and others. I know moderate price dwelling units. There may be other projects that are there. I will let them, any representatives of the county, do any justice for anything that I missed. So I believe we have a representative here from Anne Arundel County if they want to add anything, and I'll turn it over to them.
I'll go first. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ethan Hunt on behalf of Anne Arundel County. I do have with me Jansen Evelyn as well, our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Land Use, but I think Delegate Pruski summed it up pretty well. This is enabling. Anne Arundel County has utilized impact fees since 1988. Our ability to waive them is limited by state law, and so this is enabling legislation that would give the county council the authority to determine the parameters of any waivers. And I'll turn it over to Jansen for additional comments.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Jansen Evelyn, and to follow what the delegate said, along with Mr. Hunt, this enabling legislation allows us to create those parameters. And I want to point out that many of our other chartered counties have the same power. Ours is currently extremely limited, and we want to ensure that as we recently passed the county's first inclusionary housing policy. It's called the Housing Attainability Act, and it provides for some exemptions that we want to make sure the council is able to enact. Additionally, other jurisdictions that usually provide those exemptions, they usually provide them along the means for affordability, whether it's housing for the elderly, whether it's again, we already have it for housing made by nonprofits, but we also will be pursuing some redevelopment initiatives, et cetera. So we want to ensure that the council has the ability to grant not just the exemptions, but to also, and this is also an important point, to grant waivers in situations where the construction or the redevelopment that is occurring is already, they already have enough credits against it. So this is why the county executive and its administration supports House Bill 453.
Thank you to Mr. Hunt and Mr. Evelyn for presenting. We do have a few questions. The first is Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all due respect, what is the purpose? I have to say, at this moment, I am a no vote. And what is the purpose of impact fees at the current, with the current law for nonprofits that have been in existence for 3 years? What do they do? Perhaps this is for either Mr. Hunt or Mr. Evelyn.
So the way it works now is that impact fees can only be waived if the developer is a nonprofit organization that has been in existence for 3 years. So if you had a for-profit developer that was developing a workforce housing project or an affordable housing project or a senior housing project, the county would not have the ability to waive those development impact fees.
I guess let me rephrase my question. Why would we want to waive impact fees?
Oh, all right. I understand that question. So again, we would want to waive it's best practice to be able to waive impact fees in some jurisdictions or I think in Anne Arundel County, because there are going to be times where we want to spur the development of workforce housing, which is a big initiative of this current administration. We want to spur affordable housing development. We want to, in light of the new law that went into effect January 1st, I forget the name, the housing bill that Governor Moore and this body passed last year that went into effect January 1st, they're going to also incentivize housing done in places, nonprofits or places of worship. So we want to be able to, in those instances when that development is occurring, and if the impact, if based on the cost benefit analysis that jurisdiction or Anne Arundel County does, we want to be able to say, you know what, we can reduce the impact fees for this workforce housing project, for this site that's providing 15% of NPDU units. So that's primarily the reason why we would want to waive impact fees. And again, this is not across the board. This is in very limited circumstances. And
Right.
then we also may want to provide impact fee credits in situations where the work that's being done or the redevelopment that's being done already exceeds the requirements for public facility mitigation.
I see. So what I'm hearing, and this makes me feel better. Thank you, Mr. Evelyn, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel better now because I know the work that has been done by the impact fees, and I know that people are getting fed and taken care of by the impact fees. But it sounds to me that what you're saying, Mr. Evelyn, and it helps me to understand that you're saying that if it were a for-profit business, perhaps that came in or a nonprofit business that came in and they were feeling the need, perhaps, then it would be an incentive to waive those impact fees because that's less money that they would be able to do the work, for the community that they could do. So I get that. I like that. I feel better. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you, Delegate Bartlett. Delegate Chisholm?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate that we all agree that impact fees are prohibitive and they're actually a negative impact on people trying to develop. And I think if you cut impact fees across the board, we would have more housing. My concern with this bill is we're picking winners and losers, and that's going to be very subjective, and we should be applying things equally. That's what we're all here for, to try to apply things equally and to pick winners and losers based on, hey, we like this nonprofit over this nonprofit, I think is not what we should be doing as government officials. I appreciate that everybody wants more housing. The thing that's keeping housing from being developed in this county is it is just cost prohibitive. And impact fees are the first start of that. Our impact fees are very high in this county. And I understand, for the good of the order, impact fees go towards infrastructure, the roads that need to be built in order to access some of these places, and the water and the sewer lines. So I understand the point of impact fees. My stance is we should be applying, fees equally. They're too high. I agree. But if we start to give tax credits out like this, that means it's going to get higher for the private sector in favor of the public sector. And I think, and I appreciate what everybody's trying to do to get more housing. I think this has a negative effect on bringing out more housing. That's just my point, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Chisholm. Delegate Bagnall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will say, given the rate of development in my district, I'm going to respectfully disagree with the good delegate on the adverse impact on the private sector. But my question is what is in the existing ordinance? Because as I understand it, this is a repeal of the specific nonprofits for 3 years. But what are the restrictions within the existing ordinance? Because I do have concerns about how this would be utilized.
Yeah, I'm going to address it first. after serving on the council.
I was going to say you were there, so I figured you probably.
And I'll let Mr. Evelyn and Mr. Hunt. So technically, and this is always a big point of mine, people worry about who has the approval, right? So the county executive, county council, and actually the ordinance is very clear. And if you read it, the ordinance shall set the amount of exemptions or credits, establish the conditions for eligibility of the credits, and adopt procedures for those credits. And technically, the council, again, would set those parameters. This is not just the county executive saying I'd waive it, but it's my understanding that even with the removal of the language that we're providing here, the county council would have a say, not only in the eligibility piece, but also the project. And I'll let Mr. Evelyn, Mr. Hunt, correct me if I'm wrong, or even council, but that's my interpretation.
No, that's correct. Any exceptions that would be made, any exemptions, any credits, that would be done solely in the province of the county council. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Ethan, but I think the county council will be the body that will provide the exemptions or provide the list of the criteria for any exceptions or exemptions or credits.
Yeah, that's correct. The list of current exemptions is in section 1711-203 of the county code. But it's, I mean, assisted living facilities, hospital facilities, nursing homes, volunteer fire stations. So again, those are all exemptions that the county council has created under their authority that currently exists to grant exemptions for nonprofit organizations.
Thank you so much. And can you just give us that section of the code, and then I can just review it for my own
Yep,
editing.
it's section 17-11-203.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? I want to give some wait time here because I know sometimes I don't see the hands. Is there anyone else that has questions on HB 453? Okay, thank you. And thank you to Mr. Hunt and Mr. Evelyn providing additional support today. We'll move forward. I do have one announcement before we entertain any motions before we close. I know Delegate Lehman had to leave for the Prince George's delegation, but this is an official public announcement. On Monday, February 10th at 11 a.m., the Subcommittee on Education for Anne Arundel County will be meeting to discuss HB 226, which is the public school option bill. So I want to make sure that was announced for the modern public record. Delegate Rogers, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the email may have already gone out, or if it hasn't, it will. The alcohol subcommittee will be meeting on the 12th of February to discuss the one bill that we had in question. And then this is more of a question, Mr. Chair. I know we are still in the process of paying our dues, but are we going to start having like donuts and coffees on Fridays like we used to? Some of us really liked those donuts and coffees before we went to floor session or after floor session, along with the fresh fruit, which was very healthy. We seem to have gotten away from that. Yeah. And I'm really would love to have that fruit again in the mornings. That would just be a wonderful thing.
Delegate Rogers, I don't think we need a motion or all in agreement with that. That is coming. We also need people to pay their dues so that the money can go. So I will remind you and thank you for giving that plug. But yes, we will be having those treats and snacks to make sure that we're alive. And also,
I will second Delegate Rogers' fruity motion.
Thank you, Delegate Howard. I agree. I think we all could use that. But thank you, everybody, for what's that, Delegate Chisholm?
Can we Venmo? Do we have?
I'll let you talk with the secretary with that. I believe it's only checks, but
okay.
You know,
Chair Pruski,
yes,
we've not been having the Friday goodies because we've been primarily pro forma. We are anticipating starting back up next Friday, Valentine's Day.
Right.
And we will have, similar to last year, maybe a little better, hopefully, healthier for some folks that have required it. And secondarily, we're pretty much old school here in this office.
Okay.
Checks and cash are accepted. Anything else is kind of like Greek. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Delegate Chisholm. Yeah, we're not at the point with Bitcoin yet, but Delegate Rogers.
And yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Finally, I just wanted to make sure a point of clarification. I think it was mentioned earlier, but for the bills that were voted on today and last week, And I'm ultimately most concerned about the alcohol bills because Alcohol Day is coming up on the 17th. So those that were voted out of committee last week and this week, the letter will go to ECM so that, you know, you, myself, and Delegate Howard won't get punished, you know, and ECM come the 17th because, you know, we didn't do our part down in delegation.
Absolutely. And I'll let Mr. Secretary respond to that as well. Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, we just received some more of our documents that we need so that we can prepare the letters. We received those late yesterday. So letters on the bills that we have already passed, hopefully will go out either later today or first thing Monday morning. And then next Friday, we have to vote on the additional liquor bills, and we will have to get those letters out next Friday before close of business in order to meet the requirements for the 17th Alcohol Day.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask two things. One, if anyone is willing to allow Venmo, and then if they happen to have cash and they want to do it that way, I would greatly appreciate if anybody wanted to volunteer on that, because I just never remember to get cash. And the second thing is, could you tell me again when the Education Subcommittee is meeting on February 10th? At what time?
Yeah. Let me pull up the announcement again that delegate is Monday, February 10th at 11 a.m. And that's for HB 226, the public school option bill. That delegate.
And that will be by Zoom, I presume?
Yes, it will.
Okay,
Subcommittee
thank
on
you.
Zoom. Yep. Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you all. We certainly have some packed agendas. I appreciate everyone's patience, kindness. We try and get through the agenda. Remember, we're Team Arundel as we move forward, but I'll entertain a motion to close.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend and appreciate you all. Take care.